So, now what we're going to do is talk about one of the systems of the body that is oftentimes almost kind of forgotten. So, when we were doing chapter 1, we were kind of introduced to these 11 systems of the body and we had to know how the general function for each. And most people would remember the nervous system and digestive system and cardiovascular and all that. But immune system or lymphatic system is one that people tend to forget. And, I think one of the reasons is that it doesn't have a lot of really big organs that people go, brain, that's part of the nervous system. The stomach, that's part of the digestive system. So that's, I think, one of the reasons. And the other reason is that it tends to kind of operate behind the scenes, if you will. So we'll talk about some of its really main functions at the beginning of the chapter, like we do start big, and then we'll work our way down to some of the mechanisms on how it gets its work done. And we'll find that this is one of the systems that primarily operates at the cellular level. So like we said, without a lot of big organs, each time we get to a new system, we still get down to the cellular level. We talk about skeletal muscles contracting and neurons relaying signals and stuff like that. But we usually do it in the context of, okay, this is what's going on in the brain, and this is what's going on in a nerve, and stuff like that. Here, a lot of what's going on is just individual cells in all kinds of different areas of the body that are performing the functions of the lymphatic system. So let's take a look. Okay, so in essence, we've got 3 major functions for the lymphatic system or the immune system. So the first one is what we mentioned when we were talking about the cardiovascular system, and we were talking about fluid exchange occurring down at the tissue level. So we said that these lymphatic vessels will collect and carry away excess fluid from what we call the interstitial spaces. And that's basically the intercellular space in between those cells of the tissues, whether it's the skin or muscles or whatever, okay? So the first major function for the lymphatic system is to collect this excess fluid. We're doing this exchange of fluid, but a little bit more leaving the cardiovascular capillaries than being picked up. And so we're going to have particularly what are called lymphatic capillaries that are going to pick up this excess fluid and bring it back to the cardiovascular system and dump it back. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is that, so this is number 1. Number 2 is that we have these special vessels called lacteals that are important in terms of transporting fat into the circulatory system, to the organs that are going to finish processing it when we digest a meal. So we'll find that the cardiovascular system, works with the respiratory system, works with the digestive system, etc., in order to transport things to and from the cells. And with the digestive system, most of our nutrients, when we break them down into small building blocks, like amino acids from proteins and monosaccharides and things like that from our complex carbohydrates. And we put those small building blocks into the blood transports them to the cells use what they need. Fats are a little bit odd, right? They're greasy, they're slippery and stuff like that, and it's actually that way in the body too. So they're transported in a very particular way. Some of them get transported in the blood, but a lot of them get packaged and transported specifically into these vessels that are called lacteals. And the lacteals are right underneath the intestinal wall. So they get these packages of fat, and they'll transport them like up to the liver for processing, etc. Okay? So that's the second function for the lymphatic system, is it helps to transport digested fats to organs that can finish the digestive process. Okay? Now we won't talk too much about that second function there, but it is something that the system does. Third major function is that the lymphatic or the immune system helps to defend against disease. Okay? So in this chapter, we'll mainly talk about functions 1 and 3. We may mention 2, the lacteals, when we get the digestive system again, but the other 2 functions are much bigger. Excuse me. Okay, so let's start simply by talking about the lymphatic system. So if you have a patient such as this, we know we have blood vessels all over the place, arteries and veins leading to capillaries to make sure that we can deliver and get back from all the cells of the body. But in amongst all these different arteries and veins, you should realize that there's a second set of vessels that you see here is green. And the green vessels are the lymphatic vessels. And these are the ones that are in amongst the cardiovascular vessels, and they're helping the cardiovascular system do their job. Okay? So because they're going to pick up the excess fluid from the tissue. Now, the interesting thing about the lymphatic system compared to the cardiovascular system is the lymphatic system is a bit like a half of a cardiovascular system. Okay? The lymphatic system starts at lymphatic capillaries, small vessels, goes to larger and larger vessels, and finally dumps this excess fluid back to the cardiovascular system. Okay? But there's no pump to it. There's no, thick vessels that have this, tidal waves of fluid arrive and stuff like that. It starts with lymphatic capillaries, and then it goes into larger and larger lymphatic vessels. And a couple things happen along the way. Number one, like the cardiovascular system, we dump smaller vessels fluid into bigger but fewer vessels until we get back towards the heart. Specifically, we're going to dump that excess fluid to subclavian veins on either side, underneath the clavicle. That's what that name means. So we're going to collect all that excess fluid, we're going to gather it, and we're going to dump it into the subclavian vein, and we're return it back to the cardiovascular system from whence it came, if you will. But the other thing it does, notice in this tracing, right? And this is tracing just describing where this fluid is going from and to. It says lymphatic capillaries draining to lymphatic vessels, and we see lymph nodes along the way there. A lot of people know about lymph nodes, right? You or your doctor may feel them when you're ill or something like that, and they occur in a lot of different places in the body. These ones are called submandibular lymph nodes, and then this aggregation here. There are also subpaxillary ones. There's some along the torso, some in the inguinal region. So those are basically cleaning stations. The idea is it's a bit like your pool filtration system. You have this big body of fluid that's the main, and then what you do is you take off a little bit of that fluid, you clean it with a filtering system, and then you return it to the main body of fluid. Okay? That's a bit what the lymphatic system is doing. It's collecting this excess fluid with the lymphatic capillaries, picking it up from the tissues. Before it returns it to the subclavian vein, it's going to clean it in those lymph nodes to make sure we're not dumping dirty fluid or bacteria or fragmented cells back into the vein circulation. Okay? Okay, so let's take a look then at these lymphatic vessels. So lymphatic capillaries are going to be the smallest ones, and that's where the lymphatic system starts. It starts as these blind-ended, right? It's not a big circuit, blind-ended lymphatic capillaries. And so these also are made of simple squamous epithelium, very, very thin walls, right? But these are a little bit, if you will, leakier than regular cardiovascular capillaries. In fact, where these different flat epithelial cells come together, they actually have little openings between them like this, so that we can pick up excess fluid and even things like bacteria or fragmented cells or something like that from the tissues. So they have these little, what they would call valves, even in the lymphatic capillaries, that allow them to pick up this excess material and start routing it back towards the cardiovascular system. Now that fluid that enters the lymphatic capillaries is basically the same composition as plasma, basically the same composition as the interstitial fluid, the fluid in between the cells or tissues. But when it's inside of the lymphatic capillaries, we just call it lymph. Okay? Okay, so we collect that lymph inside of these lymphatic capillaries. And I always think that these lymphatic capillaries that you see here in green, they're kind of like, the roots of a tree, right? So they start just with small little tips. And then those tips kind of come together in bigger branches of like the roots of a plant and stuff like that. So again, it's not like the cardiovascular system where we see a big circuit or loop. We see those lymphatic capillaries in amongst the cardiovascular ones, picking up the excess fluid and delivering that lymph to these larger and larger lymphatic vessels and getting it back towards the cardiovascular system. And like I said, we're going to need to clean it along the way as well. Okay, so lymphatic capillaries drain into lymphatic vessels. So vessels are a little bit bigger. And if we think about it, if we picture the lymphatic system as like the second half of the cardiovascular system, capillaries, and a cardiovascular loop, we go capillaries to venules to veins. So for a lymphatic capillary going to lymphatic vessels, the lymphatic vessels have a similar structure to veins. because very low pressure, they're struggling to get that fluid up, and back towards the heart, okay? So, lymphatic vessels have very thin walls. They got valves in them, just like we saw in terms of the vein. And that's going to help to get that lymph, that fluid, back up towards the heart, okay? And as we're doing that, we're going to pass through the lymph nodes. And then finally, we're going to get to the largest lymphatic vessels, which are called the lymphatic trunks. And the trunks are going to drain into these large ducts. So, sorry, the trunk isn't the largest one. We get to these large ones that are called ducts. So you see here, we see here, like in that shot, we go from trunks, and we're going to go up to here, and you see it dumping into the subclavian. Now, technically, it dumps into both the right and the left subclavian. This whole unit, this whole figure doesn't show the whole thing, but at least it does show it, the one-way system, right? Where we start with the capillaries, we go into the vessels, you can see the valves here, you can see it going through lymph nodes to get filtered, and then finally it's going to go through these very large vessels and dump back into the cardiovascular system. So when we look at this figure here, we can see where all this lymph is going to drain into. Like we said, we go from lymphatic capillaries to vessels to trunks. There's like 5 different trunks which handle areas, 5 different areas of the body. And then finally, we're going to drain into one of 2 different ducts. Okay? On this side, on the right side, there's the right lymphatic duct. That's a very straightforward name. Okay? On the left side, so beneath the left subclavian, is called the thoracic duct. Now, this guy right here doesn't just have an odd tattoo, okay? What it's trying to show you is the area where lymph is collecting from for each of these different ducts. And so the right lymphatic duct only drains lymph from the right side of the head, the right part of the upper torso, and the right upper limb, okay? That, all the lymph from that whole area drains into the right lymphatic duct. Everything else, left side of the head, left upper limb, left upper torso, all of the lower torso, all of both of the lower limbs drains into that thoracic duct on the right side. Okay? So again, for whatever reason, this is another case where we don't have exactly symmetrical structures in the body. Okay? Thoracic duct handles most of the lymph of the body. Right lymphatic duct handles the upper right side. Okay? Okay. So now we've got a little bit of a map, if you will, as to where these lymphatic vessels are going to be coming from and going to, and returning the excess fluid back to the cardiovascular system. So now we need to look a little bit at this lymph. So we said that the lymph itself is the fluid that's inside the vessels, the lymphatic vessels, and it's very similar to plasma, etc., right? So it's got water in it, it's got dissolved substances in it, and this fluid originally left the cardiovascular capillary because of filtration, right? Blood pressure pushing it out, and it went to the tissues, and then it gets collected by the lymphatic capillaries. So in essence, what we find is, like osmotic pressure and stuff like that is going to help cause it to be in the tissues. It's going to drop back into the cardiovascular system, but also as those fluids accumulate in that interstitial space, it's going to help to push it into the lymphatic capillaries as well. So lymphatic capillaries are just waiting there with their little open valves, waiting to gather up any of that accumulating fluid that we feed down in the tissues. And at that point, it's going to, because of hydrostatic or fluid pressure, it's going to start moving up, if you will, or towards the heart. So there's a little bit excess fluid that accumulates in the tissue. If we just leave it there, the pressure in the tissues is going to increase. That's enough pressure, fluid pressure, to push it into lymphatic capillaries. There's always going to be a little bit more being left in the tissues, so a little bit more that we got to take out of it so that we don't get this expanding in the tissues. So that's hydrostatic pressure, it's fluid pressure, and it's going to cause that fluid to go into the lymphatic capillaries. There's always more arising, so it's going to push its way up and up and up and up. Okay? Okay. Now the same types of mechanisms that help the veins to get their fluid back to the heart also helps the lymphatic system, because we said that the lymphatic vessels are most like veins. And if that isn't working, like if you have surgery or something like that, not only do you have to be aware of major arteries and veins that you might cut, but the lymphatic vessels down as well, because they're all in parallel with those arteries and veins. And if you end up cutting lymphatic vessels, then all of that excess fluid that was drained from that region is now going to be stuck there. So they have to be very aware of lymphatic vessels, otherwise you'll get that accumulation of fluid that we call edema. Okay, so now we know about getting the tissue fluid from where it started into the lymphatic vessels as lymph, getting back to the heart. But we said that along the way it's going to be cleaned via these lymph nodes. So how, like our pool system, do these work as a filter? So these lymph nodes actually contain cells that can get rid of bacteria and various parts of cells, etc. Now these cells oftentimes are what are called lymphocytes and macrophages. These should be somewhat familiar. Lymphocytes are one of our 5 different types of white blood cells. Okay? So not only do we have lymphocytes in the blood, but we have lymphocytes out in the tissues, out in the lymphatic system, and residing in these lymph nodes, acting as cleaning stations. And this is where we get that overlap, like we said, between the cardiovascular system and the immune system. We have cells that work in both systems. Now, macrophages also should be somewhat familiar. Macrophages are big phages to eat, and we know that there were at least 2 different types of phagocytes that are white blood cells. Neutrophils were the small ones, and there were some big ones in the human animal. What were those? Was it kissing disease? Yes, mono, okay? They're called monocytes, okay? There's a smaller relationship there. But the idea is monocytes were our big phagocytes, and monocytes, when they're outside the cardiovascular system, they're called macrophages. So those are activated monocytes that are existing within these lymph nodes that are working to eat up anything that we need to get rid of in these lymph nodes, okay? So there's a little resonant population of these cells that help to defend us. So here's a diagram of the lymph node. You can see the lymph pretty brought to it. Notice here's the little valves, so we can make sure that it's always coming one way. These are called afferent lymphatic vessels, just like the nerves and neurons, right? Afferent coming in, efferent going out. And so it's going to percolate through the cortex and through the medulla, where all of these different types of cells are going to be getting rid of pathogens and bacteria and stuff like that. And then the clean lymph is going to pass through the efferent lymphatic vessels and try to get back towards the cardiovascular system. Okay? Okay, so we said that macrophages in the lymphocytes are going to filter the lymph, remove bacteria and cellular debris. They also serve as a local production site for lymphocytes. So lymphocytes not only can be produced in the red bone marrow, but they can actually have little production sites in the lymph nodes as well. So these are some of the few of the white blood cells that can actually be produced outside of the bone marrow. So they're unique in that way. All right, so all the time, this excess fluid is being collected from tissues. If you have an infection, like, you have a cut and it's infected or something like that, that fluid and that tissue is going to get infected, and the lymphatics are going to be picking up those bacteria, etc., and it's going to be then cleaned and taken out via lymph nodes along the way. But when those lymph nodes and those cells in the lymph nodes become activated, what we're going to find is they're going to raise the emergency alarm and let the body know that we're infected with something, not only in this area, but now those bacteria or pathogens are getting other places that are picked up by the systems of the body. And so we need to be on alert all around the body for these infectious agents. Okay, so this diagram here shows us some of our different lymph nodes, right? So there's some up by the head, from the axillary region, to the torso ones, abdominal ones, etc. So lots of different places where we can filter the lymph before it goes back into main circulation. Now, because this system doesn't have a lot of large organs to it, and that's why sometimes people forget it. But there are at least a couple that exist. Now, lymph nodes do have multiple tissue types, and so those can be kind of considered organs. But the biggest organs of the lymphatic system are the thymus and the spleen. So the spleen The spleen, you have only one of those. It kind of looks like a kidney. We said that this is a place where we can filter the blood, get rid of bacteria in the blood, etc., and store blood. We said because it holds so much blood, if it gets cut or something like that, or damaged, like a car accident, they'll remove it because there's a big chance that it will leak all over the place. But it also has areas of it that will, in essence, kind of try to clean the various fluids of the body. So the spleen counts as part of the lymphatic system. The thymus does as well. Now the thymus is pretty interesting because the thymus is not, look at this term, it's not thyroid, like we talked about before, this is thymus. Thyroid is up here, by the thyroid cartilage that we'll talk about the respiratory system. Thymus is a vital organ that is just superior to the heart. And it's much larger when you're young, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you grow older. In fact, as adults, the thymus is basically so small it's almost just like scar tissue that's remaining there. But it's very important when you're young, because when you're young, you're developing your immune system. You're developing this ability to protect your body against all these different kinds of disease-causing agents. And the thymus has a big role in that. What it does is, in essence, the thymus is going to help train some of our lymphocytes to, it's almost like boot camp for them. It trains them to be able to recognize foreign cells and protect our own cells. Okay? So it says, you take lymphocytes that mature into T lymphocytes or T cells. And that's the first time we've probably seen that, right? Before we just saw lymphocytes. So if now we're saying that there are T lymphocytes, that means there must be some other type of lymphocytes as well. The other type of lymphocytes we have are B lymphocytes, also known as B cells. Okay? But specifically, the T cells are the ones that are mature and trained with a boot camp into the thymus. Okay? It's superior to the heart. So the thymus is an organ of the lymphatic system. Like I said, it is big and very important and active when you're young, and then it gets smaller and smaller in time. And we'll talk about the B cells coming up. The B cells, actually, like all the other white blood cells, are produced and trained and released from the bone. Now, the B can help you to remind you that B cells come from the bone, they get trained in the bone, and the T cells come from the thymus instead. Okay? So here is an image to help us make distinction. This is the thyroid. Like we talked about the release of calcitonin, the thyroid hormone, stuff like that. This is the thymus right here. Now, obviously, this is a young individual, and that thymus is pretty big, right? It's slightly smaller than the heart that you see inferior to it. But later on, as our immune system gets up and running and develops and experience and stuff like that, the role as a training center gets less and less, and so it gets smaller and smaller. Okay, now like we said, the spleen is also part of the lymphatic system. And it works a bit like a lymph node, except for it helps to filter the blood as opposed to the lymph. And then a couple sections of it is what's called white pulp and red pulp. So the white pulp has our white blood cells and lymphocytes inside of it. It gives it that whitish color that work to remove some of our different bacteria and stuff like that. And then the red pulp has stored red blood cells, around red blood cells, as well as some other white blood cells in it as well. So it tends to look a bit like this. So you can see kind of the red pulp out here, and then the white pulp in here in the center. So again, like a lymph node, but it works to clean the blood itself. So since it has a defensive function like that, counts as part of the immune system. Okay. So now, what we've been doing is looking big picture. So we had 3 roles for the lymphatic system. The smallest one we said was those lacteals that are transporting fats. Then we said that it's going to be picking up excess fluid and returning to the cardiovascular system. But we also said it's going to be protecting you. It's going to be your bodily defense system, whether it's the lymph nodes that we talked about, filtering blood, or protecting you in other places or other ways. And that's what we're going to focus on here, is the immune system and your bodily defenses. Okay? Okay. the first thing we have to think about is, if we're talking about defenses, that makes you think maybe of offense and defense, right? Things that are against each other in a battle or war or something like that, right? And so, if we are defensive, if we have defenders in us, what are we defending against? Okay? We are defending against these things that are called pathogens. Now, a pathogen is something that causes disease, something that will potentially reproduce inside you and make you ill. It will disrupt homeostasis. It may cause organs to fail in terms of their primary functions and things like that. Okay? So a pathogen, there are most common pathogens being bacteria and viruses that you hear about in terms of flu and colds and different types of infectious diseases, etc. Okay? So those are your two most common pathogens. But there are other things like protists and fungi and parasites like parasitic worms and stuff like that. Okay? Those are kind of the pathogens. But by far and away, bacteria and viruses are most common pathogenic or infectious agents. Okay, so how do we effectively protect ourselves against these very, very small microscopic organisms? Well, what we have is basically 3 lines of defense. Okay? And what we find is that, as I mentioned 3, we'll go through the 3 altogether, but the way that they defend us is somewhat either non-specific or specifically. And what that means is, it's a bit like storing laundry. When you're storing laundry, if you're looking at a big pile, it's very easy to sort, white from everything else, right? Colors and stuff like that. So you can easily sort out white, color, white, color, back and forth, right? But upon your second pass, right, if you're doing more detailed or specific sorting, then you go, okay, so here's pinks and reds and stuff like over here. This is still, and this has to go to the dry cleaner, and this has a stain on it, and you might read the tag on this one, right? That type of specific sorting takes more time, more detail, so you know specifically how to deal with that particular garment, etc. Okay? And our defenses are, in a way, organized in those 2 levels. In that, we have cells and defenses that look at our cells and say, okay, you guys are supposed to be here. I recognize you because once upon a time, we talk about those antigens, right? Those little protein name tags that are on the surface of the cells, and how my name is, right? The purity is that I'm supposed to be on your team. You're supposed to protect me. So there are cells of our immune system that look at our cells and say, okay, I recognize you. You're safe. Anything that doesn't look like that, I'm going to try to kill. Okay? That's the non-specific aspect where it's like, I don't care what it is, if you're not on my team, I'm going to try to kill you. Okay? So that's one type of defense that we have. And that can occur at the surface of the body, and we'll talk about examples of that, or it can occur inside the body. I have cells inside the body that don't care what's in here, but I recognize you, so I'm going to eat you, or secrete some nasty chemical on you, or so you are. Okay? So, these other kinds of defenses are called the specific defenses, and these ones do care exactly what you're infected with. It doesn't matter whether it's bacteria or a virus. It doesn't matter what particular strain of virus it is, etc. Is it a cold virus? Is it the HIV virus? Is it the coronavirus, etc.? Any of those types of things, this brain of the immune system is going to try to recognize exactly what it is so that it can very effectively deal with that particular pathogen. And then the other critical aspect about the specific defense is that after it recognizes what it is and who it is, if you will, it remembers that particular pathogen, hopefully for the rest of your life. And so that's why the virus that causes chickenpox, if you've had chickenpox before, how many people have had chickenpox before? Most, okay? So, if you have chickenpox before, you're not supposed to be able to get them again, right? And that's because you have cells within you that spend the time to recognize that chickenpox virus and it defended you against it at that time. And then you have some of those same cells that have stayed with you that remember that particular virus. And if you get re-exposed to it, those cells right there, like I kill you, you're out of here, I kill you off. And so you may not even get any symptoms from it, because your immune system cells that remember it, take care of it before you get the full level of symptoms, etc. Okay? Okay. So, non-specific defenses and specific defenses, these are all defending you against these pathogens, but they're going to be doing it in different ways. Okay? Alright, so what I'm going to do is there's a good website that I want to show you quickly. And hopefully, it's updated here, so that I can find it. Hold on. Good. Alright, so let me get our online people so that they can see it. Okay. So everybody now should see a website where there's an ID in the upper left-hand corner, and you can see the link right there. So it says media, here's the media. All I did is I did a Google search to see up here for ID and immune system. And then I like the first link, I'll put this in the chat area. Okay. So this is a program called Interactive Physiology. The biological book publisher is called Pearson. They're not our book publisher, but this was the very first system of modules they did. And so what they did is they're developing it free, and it's still out on the web. You can combine interactive physiology with like all the different systems, and it'll show you like neurons, conducting impulses, and all that stuff. But this one's free, and I think it does a really good job of kind of showing us our defenses. For a long time, I always thought, maybe like you guys do, when I think of defenses, I think of like that battle war or something like that. I think they kind of get in you really bad, you're trying to mount your defenses to get rid of them, etc. And then this website does a similar type of example or analogy on how people learn the immune system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just the first module here. But realize that on the web, you can go here and anytime and review the other ones. So I'm going to go through the immune system and work through here, but you can see that there's a lot of other ones as well. Alright, so let me do this. Make sure everything's up and running here. Oh, come on, really? Really? Alright, hold on. I'm try it with another browser. That's so disappointing. And of course, I don't have the right to be able to install the internet. Alright, hold on. Great. Let me check. See if Chrome or Explorer is fine in terms of the plugin. It runs with the Flash. So I have that Flash runner do it. And it's thinking. I watch it as it continues thinking. But basically, what the website goes through, if it comes back to look at, what the website goes through is talk about the different specific, non-specific defenses. And the non-specific defenses make up our first and our second line of defense. And so I like to think about it as, again, you see it in the video someday. I like to think about it as, if this is a castle you're defending or something like that, you have a moat or a wall that goes all the way around the castle, right? Those are your external defenses. Those things try to physically keep things, pathogens, from entering your body. So if we're trying to think of our external defenses, what might our external defenses be? Skin, right? So skin is like our body, right? It forms the border between what's outside of us and what's inside of us. And so the skin is a very good example of an external, non-specific defense. Your skin doesn't care whether it's bacteria or virus or something like that. If you have healthy microbes skin, those things are on the surface and they're not getting inside of you. Okay? So the skin is an example of our first line of defense. First line of defense are going to be, let me take it up here. Our first line of defense is going to be, get somebody. First line of defense is going to be external, non-specific. Okay. Now, non-specific is also sometimes called innate, like you see right there. Innate means you're born with it. Okay. So, external, non-specific, or innate defenses are your first line of defense. They're usually for outside of anything from getting in. So, we'll use different examples of that in just a minute. Our second line of defense is we're already talking about it. Our second line of defense, we're going to be internal, non-specific. Okay? So that means whatever it is, whatever pathogen, really start out of the barrier and that's inside. So we're going to have some cells and then like that inside of us that are, again, they don't care what it is. I don't recognize you and I try to kill you. Okay? So it's internal, but it's non-specific. Then, the third line of defense is also going to be internal, right? We're inside the pathogen inside. So it's going to be internal defense, but it's specific. And sometimes the specific frame of the our defenses is called adaptive immune system. And that is, adaptive means that it changes, it adapts to time. And when we say that your specific defenses have memory, like predicting hot, that's the adaptive part. Every time you get exposed to something, the cells of your adaptive immune system remember it, and now your immune system has been boosted, it's changed, it's got more memory, you remember more things now, and can protect you better. So the specific, our third line of defense, specific and internal defenses are also called adaptive. So you can use either specific or adaptive. Okay. So let's just focus for a minute on our first line of defense. So this is external, non-specific. So our first example, we talked about we'll see on the next page, but species resistance actually counts as a non-specific external defense. So what that means is that there are certain diseases, etc., that will only be affecting particular animals or organisms, right? So, for instance, you hear about like bird flu, swine flu, and stuff like that, okay? Those are viruses that can be spread between different birds or between different states, etc. Okay? And normally, that does not affect humans. And so you can have species resistance to it. You can be walking around these birds all day, but the more different species you're totally organisms, those viruses don't work well at affecting your cells. Okay? So the one thing they worry about some of those diseases is that the virus, a virus replicates, reproduces itself very, very quickly. We say, whatever, 20 years or something like that, have kids or something like that, and then you might have some, you have to wait at least 9 months before you have another one or so. So you reproduce very slowly. Viruses do it like on the order of a minute, hours, etc. They reproduce almost exponentially. And so when they're reproducing, those mutations, like we talked about cell division, mutation happens, and so the virus can actually change. And the more it reproduces, the more changes can happen. And so there's a possibility that they could mutate to where they could infect humans, right? And that's always the big thing that they're worried about in terms of bird flu, swine flu, etc. Is that if it can jump, if you will, and infect dinosaurs, now the virus can infect humans, the human can get sick from a bird, and then of course the human can infect other humans, now it's spreading. So that's one thing that they're concerned about. And in general, there's a number of diseases you're protected from just because you're not a dog or a bird or a pig. Okay. So we also said that skin counts as first line of defense, right? It's kind of a mechanical barrier. You can membrane also count as the first line of defense, right? You can membrane the lining, these organs that go to the outside, right? So like nasal passages, your mouth, digestive system, your urinary tract, stuff like that. You can membrane there, and they can catch these causing agents and try to keep them from getting inside. Okay. Other things that are our first line of defense, things like acid juice and lysozymes. So where do you think acid juice is going to be? You think acid, what does that mean? Exactly. So, gastric juice, like hydrochloric acid that exists in your stomach, So when you are studying late night and you drop your food on the floor, you're doing a half-life rule. Okay? So if you're getting on anyway, what happens is when you get off and you use your brain. Others, as they get down to subject, I know what happens is you break apart molecules of your food, also can break apart and bacteria. Okay? So bacteria can be used. Count as an external event. Even if you solve it, if it happens, maybe you're on the body wall yet. So technically it's under your body. So you could, either you have a long enough force or something like that, you could reach down there, grab whatever's in there, and pull it out. Right? It's not inside your tissue, inside your body yet. So it's an external, non-specific event. Lysozymes are inside that for years, and as they wash off your eye, they have this antimicrobial, antibacterial, etc. Okay? So all of these are non-specific, don't care what it is, you're trying to go in, and external, first line of defense. So one of the things that we want to try to remember as we're going through the immune system is, I know it's hard because we're talking about like cells, microbes, like that, here's your lungs, here's your heart. But if we can at least keep an idea of these three lines of defense and have like a couple of examples of each of the three lines of defense, and help people organize their heads about how this system works. Okay? So what we've been talking about so far is first line of defense. We have a few different examples of it. Okay? So we're talking about outside the body, ways that we can keep stuff from getting in. Okay? So what we can continue with, second and third lines of defense, talk about examples of things that inside specifically, and then finally getting into our specific defense, or our adaptive defense, and how they work. Okay? But our website doesn't want to be continuing to work for us. What we're going to do is, I'll see if I can check that out. We're probably scheduled a little bit ahead, so I think we'll end a little bit early today. I'll check out the website and see if we can get running for next time. So we want to watch that right to get in, and then we'll continue talking about our